The holographic display flickered in the massive chamber of Proxima Station, showing numbers that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Ambassador Hyun-woo stood perfectly still as he watched the final vote count appear across the curved walls. 3,000 species had cast their judgment on whether humans should remain part of galactic civilization. The numbers glowed in harsh blue light: 2,847 votes for exile, 143 abstentions, and only 10 votes against. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Hyun-woo could hear his own heartbeat as thousands of alien eyes turned toward the small human delegation. He had known this moment was coming for months, ever since the whispers started in the diplomatic corridors, ever since the larger species began complaining about human ambition and human innovation and human refusal to accept the comfortable stagnation that defined Council. Space. The Vren representative rose from its seat, its crystalline body catching the light as it moved. Its voice echoed through the translation system that made all Council business understandable to every species present. The vote is concluded. Humanity has been found incompatible with galactic civilization. You have disrupted our markets with your constant innovations. You have challenged our established social order with your individual rights philosophies. You have filed 17 major patent applications in just 20 years, threatening industries that have operated unchanged for centuries. Hyun-woo almost laughed at that last accusation. 17 patents in 20 years was considered excessive by Council standards. Back on Earth, 17 patents were filed every hour. The gulf between human culture and Council culture had always been vast. But he had hoped that diplomacy and patience might bridge it. He had been wrong. Captain Gi-won stood beside Hyun-woo, her military uniform crisp, despite the long hours they had spent in the Council chambers. She leaned close and whispered, "Orders, Ambassador." Her hand rested near her communicator, ready to send word back to Earth, ready to trigger whatever response humanity had prepared for this moment. Hyun-woo held up one hand, asking for patience. He stepped forward to the speaking platform, his movements slow and deliberate. The Council expected anger. They expected protests and legal challenges and possibly even military threats. Hyun-woo could see it in the way the security drones had positioned themselves around the human delegation. Ready to intervene if things turned violent, he reached the platform and looked out across the chamber. At 3,000 species who had just voted to exile his people from everything they had built in galactic space. Research stations, mining colonies, trade posts, diplomatic missions, all of it would have to be abandoned. Millions of humans would have to leave the lives they had built among the stars. "We accept your decision," Hyun-woo said simply. The translation systems carried his words across the chamber, and he watched confusion ripple through the assembled delegates. The Vren representative actually took a step backward, its crystalline structure making a grinding sound of surprise. "We will be gone within 1 year," Hyun-woo continued. "You will have no further trouble from humanity. We will remove ourselves from Council space entirely and completely. This is our final communication to the Galactic Council, as members of this body." He turned and walked back to the human delegation without waiting for a response. Gi-won fell into step beside him, her face carefully neutral, even though he could see the questions in her eyes. The rest of the human diplomatic team followed them out of the chamber in perfect formation, their footsteps echoing in the stunned silence they left behind. They made it to the transport bay before Ji-won finally spoke. "Sir, what just happened?" "We had legal challenges prepared. The defense brief alone was 300 pages. We had allies ready to support us in procedural delays that could have tied this up for years." Hyun-woo looked at her tired face and saw the same exhaustion he felt in his own bones. "How many years, Captain?" 5, 10. And at the end of it, the vote would be the same or worse. They don't want us here. They fear what we represent. Change, Gi-won said quietly. Exactly. The Council has existed for 12,000 years, with minimal technological or social progress. They like it that way. They find it comfortable. We've been members for barely 20 years, and we've already disrupted dozens of their established systems just by existing. Hyun-woo activated his secure communicator as they boarded the transport ship. "Get me Admiral Minji, priority channel." The connection established within seconds. Admiral Minji's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. She was aboard her flagship in orbit around Mars, where she commanded Earth's United Fleet. "I saw the vote totals, Ambassador." "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Hunwoo said. "Execute Project Horizon. Full implementation. We're leaving Council space, and we're doing it on our terms, not theirs." Minji's eyes widened slightly. "You're certain?" "Once we start, there's no going back." "I've never been more certain of anything. The Council expects us to beg for concessions, or negotiate for partial exile, or drag this through their courts for years. We're going to do none of that. We're going to pack up every human asset in Council space and disappear before they realize what's happening." "How long do I have?" Minji asked. "I want us gone in 6 months." Guan made a choking sound beside him. "Sir, that's impossible. We have 17 million humans spread across Council space. The logistics alone are already planned," Hunwoo interrupted. "Project Horizon has been in development since the first. Exile rumors started. Dr. Soman has been building the colony ships in secret for 8 months. Commander Taeyong has already scouted routes beyond the galactic rim. We're not unprepared, Captain. We're just finally committed." The transport ship lifted off from Proxima Station. Carrying the human delegation away from the council chambers for the last time, through the viewport, Hunwoo could see the massive structures shrinking behind them. 20 years of diplomatic work, all ending in a single vote. But as he watched the station disappear, Hunwoo felt something unexpected. Not grief or anger, but relief. Humanity had spent 2 decades trying to fit into the Council's comfortable, stagnant civilization. They had held back their natural drive to explore and innovate and push boundaries. They had tried to be what the Council wanted them to be. Now they could finally be themselves. "Send the message to all human facilities," Hunwoo ordered. "The exodus begins now." "And Captain?" "Yes, sir?" "Make sure the Council knows we're not running away. We're moving forward. There's a difference." Dr. Salman stood in the observation deck of Construction Bay 7, watching the last hull plates being welded onto the colony ship New Dawn. It was the 43rd such vessel to be completed in the secret shipyards that humanity had been building in the outer reaches of the solar system. Each ship could carry 50,000 people and sustain them indefinitely, with hydroponics bays, manufacturing facilities, and educational centers all built into the massive structures. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Commander Taeyun said, appearing beside Soman at the viewport. The Vanguard Fleet Commander had just returned from his latest scouting mission beyond the galactic rim, his ship bearing scorch marks from navigating through stellar phenomena that Council species wouldn't dare approach. Soman nodded without taking her eyes off the ship. 8 months from first design to launch-ready status. The Council would say it's impossible. Their shipbuilding programs take decades, with committees and reviews and endless safety protocols. "And that's why we're leaving," Taeyong said. "They've forgotten how to build anything quickly because they've forgotten why speed matters. They think they have forever." The communicator on Summon's wrist buzzed. She activated it, and Ambassador Hyanwal's face appeared, his expression tired but determined. The vote went as expected. Execute the full evacuation. We have 6 months. Salman felt her stomach tighten. 6 months to evacuate 17 million people spread across dozens of systems. To dismantle research stations and mining colonies and trade outposts. To erase every trace of human presence in Council space. "We'll do it in 5, she said. Over the next weeks, humanity mobilized with a precision that shocked the galactic community. The Council had expected months of negotiations about exit terms and refugee resettlement. Instead, human facilities began shutting down within days of the vote. Mining operations in the outer belt went dark as equipment was packed into cargo ships. Research stations near Council worlds were stripped to the bare walls. Every piece of valuable equipment cataloged and loaded for transport. Researcher coordinated the scientific evacuation from her office on Europa Station. She had spent 3 years secretly cataloging viable worlds beyond Council space. using long-range probes that Council sensors couldn't detect. Now, her data was being distributed to every colony ship captain, giving them target destinations that the Council didn't know existed. As the Kyriem are requesting passage, her assistant reported. Pulling up a diplomatic message on the main screen, they're a minor species, only about 200,000 individuals total. They say they want to join the human exodus. Geo frowned. Why would they leave? They're Council members? Barely. They're ignored by the major species, and their homeworld has been strip-mined by Vren industrial operations. They see what we're doing, and they want out too. Before Geo could respond, another message arrived. Then another. The Nethrons, a solitary species that valued individual freedom above collective harmony, were requesting passage. So were the Kalash, who had been marginalized for their aggressive trading practices. Within hours, Geo was fielding requests from 24 minor species who wanted to escape. Council control. She forwarded the messages to Ambassador Hyunwoo with a simple question. Do we take them? The answer came back within an hour. Yes, anyone who wants to join us is welcome. We're not building an exclusive club. We're building something better than the Council. The evacuation accelerated. Human transport ships moved through Council space in precisely coordinated patterns. Picking up personnel and equipment with military efficiency, the Council watched with growing unease as humanity's orderly departure revealed just how organized and capable humans actually were. On Mars, Admiral Minji coordinated the fleet movements from her command center. Holographic displays showed the positions of every human vessel in known space, all converging on rally points at the edge of Council territory. Status report, she ordered. 73% of personnel evacuated, her operations officer reported. All military vessels accounted for? The colony ships are filling faster than projected because of the alien refugees. How many non-humans are joining us? Current count is 400,000 across 18 species. The Kyriem are coming almost entirely, about 180,000. The rest are scattered individuals and small groups. Minji studied the numbers. Nearly 500,000 aliens choosing to leave the safety of Council space to join humanity's leap into the unknown. It was a responsibility she hadn't anticipated, but also a validation. These species recognized what the Council refused to see. Humanity represented not chaos, but opportunity back on Proxima Station. Ambassador Hyunwoo prepared for his final diplomatic duty in Council space. He had requested one last audience with the Council, not to plead or negotiate, but to make a final statement. The request had been granted out of curiosity, more than courtesy. He stood before the assembled delegates 3 months after the exile vote. The Council chambers looked exactly as they had during that vote, but the atmosphere was different now. Uncertainty had replaced the smug satisfaction that had permeated the chamber when the exile was announced. I stand before you for the last time as a representative of humanity, Hyunwoo began. In 3 months, we have evacuated 80% of our population from Council space. In 2 more months, we will be completely gone. No human stations, no human trade posts, no human presence whatsoever. The Vren representative spoke, its crystalline voice carrying notes of confusion. You have cooperated. We expected resistance. Why would we resist? Hyunwoo asked. You voted for us to leave. We're leaving. You wanted your comfortable, unchanging civilization back. You can have it. But the economic disruption, another delegate began. Is your problem now? Hyunwoo said flatly. You've built your economy around species that innovate slowly and trade predictably. You depended on human logistics networks and human manufacturing efficiency without acknowledging it. That was your choice. Deal with the consequences. He pulled out a data chip and placed it on the speaking platform. This contains a complete map of every human asset we're removing from Council space. We're leaving nothing behind that could be of value. When we're gone completely. Where will you go? A delegate asked. There was genuine curiosity in the translated question. Hugh smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Beyond the rim, into the regions you've deemed too dangerous or too unprofitable to explore. We'll build our civilization out there, away from your regulations and your stagnation and your fear of change. He picked up the data chip and walked toward the exit. Then he paused and looked back one last time. You wanted us gone to preserve your comfort and your monopolies. We're leaving to build something you can't imagine. Don't look for us. We won't be back. The council chambers erupted in noise as Hyunwoo left, but he didn't look back. Giwon was waiting for him at the transport bay with the last human diplomatic team still in council space. That was harsh, sir, she observed. They deserved harsh. They exiled us because we made them uncomfortable, not because we did anything wrong. They chose stagnation over progress. Hyunwoo boarded the transport and activated his communicator. Admiral Mingi, this is Hyunwoo. The last diplomatic mission is complete. Begin final departure sequence. Cross council space, the remaining human vessels received the signal. The Exodus entered its final phase. Within weeks, the last humans would cross beyond council territory into the unknown regions of the Galactic Rim, as the transport ship carried Hyunwoo away from Proxima Station. He watched the council headquarters shrink in the viewport, somewhere out beyond the rim. Commander Taeyong was already establishing the first waypoints. Dr. Summon's colony ships were ready to deploy. Researcher Geo had mapped viable worlds that no council species knew existed. Humanity wasn't running away. They were running towards something better, Commander Taeyong gripped the armrests of his captain's chair as the ship bucked and shuddered through another gravity well. The stellar phenomena this deep into the galactic rim would have destroyed most council vessels. But the Pathfinder had been built specifically for this kind of punishment. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency, adjusting course and compensating for gravitational fluctuations that appeared without warning. Clear of the anomaly field, his navigator reported. We're approaching the target system now. On the main view screen, a binary star system came into focus. Twin suns orbited each other in a dance that created constantly shifting light patterns across the system. 3 planets orbited in stable zones, and long-range scans showed that the second planet had an oxygen-rich atmosphere and liquid water. Begin detailed scans, Taeyong ordered. I want to know everything about that planet before we recommend it for colonization. This was his 8th scouting mission beyond the rim in as many weeks. Each time, he pushed further into regions that council species considered too dangerous to explore. The stellar anomalies, the unpredictable gravity wells, the radiation fields, all of it kept the council away. But Taeyong saw opportunity in the chaos. These were places humanity could claim without interference. Engineer Daeon appeared on his secondary screen, calling from the engine room. Her face was smudged with grease, but her eyes were bright with excitement. Commander, the drive modifications are working better than expected. I think I can increase our efficiency in anomaly fields by another 30%. Do it, Taeyong said. The colony ships will need every advantage when they start arriving. 2 weeks later, the first colony ship entered the system that would become known as New Harbor. Colonist Seojin stood at the viewport of the new dawn, watching the binary suns grow larger as they approached. Behind him, 50,000 colonists prepared for landfall on a world that no human had ever touched. It's beautiful, said the Kyrene, standing beside him. The small alien had become Seojin's assistant during the voyage, helping coordinate the integration of human and non-human colonists. And terrifying. Those suns would give most council species constant nausea. Good thing we're not most species, Seojin replied. He activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention all colonists. We're beginning descent to New Harbor. This is our new home. Let's make it worth leaving everything behind for. The landing was rougher than anyone hoped, but smoother than many feared. The binary suns created atmospheric effects that made navigation challenging, but the pilots adapted quickly. Within hours, prefabricated structures were being assembled on the surface. Within days, the first crops were planted in soil that had never known agriculture. Seojin walked through the growing settlement 3 weeks after landfall, marveling at what they had built. The colony already had housing for 20,000, with more being constructed daily. Agricultural domes were producing food. Manufacturing facilities were operational. And most importantly, there were no council regulations telling them what they could or couldn't build. We received another supply ship from the Exodus fleet, his logistics officer reported, and there's someone else with them. A scout named Youngman. He says he has important findings to share. Scout Youngman was a thin man with intense eyes and hands that never stopped moving. He spread holographic images across Seojin's desk, showing structures that clearly weren't natural formations. I found these on the fourth planet of a system 30 light-years from here. They're ruins. Ancient ones. Pre-council by at least 10,000 years. Seojin leaned forward, studying the images. The architecture was unlike anything in council databases. Elegant curves combined with geometric precision in ways that suggested advanced mathematical understanding. How extensive are they? I've only scratched the surface. There could be dozens of sites across the rim. The council never explored this region thoroughly enough to find them. Youngman pulled up another image, this one showing what looked like machinery. And there's technology. Inactive but intact. If we could study it, get Dr. Salmon out here, Seojin ordered. This is bigger than establishing colonies. We might have found something that explains why the council never ventured this far. Dr. Soman arrived 2 weeks later aboard a ship loaded with scientific equipment. She stood in the ruins on that distant fourth planet, her instruments scanning structures that had stood silent for millennia. The data that came back made her hands shake. These beings were more advanced than the council, she said to Youngman, her voice barely above a whisper. Look at this energy signature. They understood physics in ways we're only beginning to grasp. And these architectural patterns suggest they faced the same choice humanity just faced. What choice? Youngman asked. Conform or evolve. The ruins show 2 distinct building styles. An earlier one that matches council aesthetic preferences, all focused on stability and permanence. Then a later style that's wildly experimental, pushing boundaries. Salmon activated a holographic reconstruction based on her scans. I think they were part of whatever the council was back then. And I think they left, just like we did. What happened to them? I don't know yet, but they left us tools. Salmon pointed to a massive structure at the center of the ruins. That's not a building. It's a machine. And I think we can learn to activate it. Back on New Harbor, the colony was thriving beyond anyone's initial projections. Engineer Dayon had modified their drives to the point where travel between rim systems was faster than council standard routes. Agricultural specialists had created crops that didn't just survive in New Harbor's unique environment, but actually thrived in it, producing higher yields than Earth standard plants. More colony ships arrived weekly, each one carrying 50,000 hopeful settlers and their alien allies. The Kyrene established their own district in the growing city, their biotechnology expertise helping develop medical treatments that worked across species lines. The Netherans contributed advanced mathematical frameworks that revolutionized everything from architecture to navigation. Seojin stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement 6 months after landfall. The city below housed nearly 200,000 beings now, a mix of humans and the various species who had chosen to join the Exodus. The binary suns cast strange shadows across buildings that combined human engineering with alien aesthetics. Creating something entirely new, a communication came through from the rim's edge. More ships were arriving, but these weren't colony vessels. They were research ships, military vessels, and industrial craft. The full weight of humanity's Exodus fleet was beginning to arrive, turning the galactic rim from an unexplored frontier into humanity's new home. Ambassador Yuno's face appeared on Seojin's communicator. The old diplomat looked tired but satisfied. How's the first colony progressing? Beyond expectations, Ambassador. We're not just surviving out here. We're thriving. The alien species integration is working better than planned. And the ancient ruins Youngman found, they're going to change everything. Good. Because we're not just building colonies anymore, Seojin. We're building a new civilization. One that doesn't have to conform to anyone else's expectations. 3 more colony ships landed that week. Then 5 more the week after. The rim was becoming crowded with human ambition and alien hope. Every species that had joined the Exodus brought their own expertise, their own culture. their own vision of what this new civilization could be, Dr. Soman made another breakthrough with the ancient technology. The machines in the ruins weren't weapons or tools in the traditional sense. They were learning systems designed to accelerate technological development. The ancient civilization had built them to push boundaries, to evolve beyond what they had been. They were like us, Soman told the gathering of colony leaders. They refused to stagnate. They built these machines to ensure their civilization never stopped growing, never stopped learning. And then they moved on to something even greater. Where did they go? Someone asked. Soman smiled. I don't know yet. But they left these tools for whoever came after. For whoever was brave enough to venture beyond the comfortable and the known. They left them for us. As New Harbor's first year approached, the settlement had grown into a genuine city. 500,000 beings called it home. Farms stretched across the horizon. Factories produced everything from spacecraft components to medical equipment. And at the center of it all, humans and aliens worked side by side. Building something the Council could never have imagined, the Galactic Rim had been empty space. Too dangerous and unprofitable for Council exploration. Now it was becoming the heart of something new. A civilization built on ambition instead of comfort, on innovation instead of stagnation, on cooperation between those who refused to be limited by what others thought was impossible. The exile had been meant to isolate humanity. Instead, it had freed them. Councillor Vren Prime stood before the Economic Committee, watching the projections that painted a picture of cascading failure across Council space. The numbers were undeniable and devastating. In the 18 months since humanity's departure, the Council's economy had contracted by 12%. For a civilization that measured growth in centuries and prized stability above all else, it was nothing short of catastrophic. The logistics networks have collapsed. The Thalian trade minister reported his multiple arms gesturing at different data streams simultaneously. Human-operated shipping routes handled 47% of intersector commerce. The species we've contracted to replace them are slower and less efficient. Delivery times have tripled in some regions. Manufacturing output is down across 17 industrial sectors, another counselor added. The humans provided innovation and efficiency improvements that we didn't realize we had become dependent on. Without their input, our factories are reverting to older, slower methods. Vren Prime felt the crystalline equivalent of a headache building in his core structure. He had pushed hardest for the exile, arguing that humanity's rapid innovation was destabilizing established markets. Now those same markets were failing without human participation. Surely the species we've elevated to fill the gaps are trying their best, the trade minister interrupted. But they're not human. They don't have that relentless drive to optimize and improve. They're content with adequate, when humans always pushed for better. The reports continued for hours. The Vren Collective's monopolies, which Vren Prime had claimed to be protecting by removing human competition, were crumbling. Without humans to compete against, there was no pressure to innovate or improve efficiency. The monopolies had grown complacent. Now customers were finding alternatives or simply doing without. Across council space, other species were beginning to question the exile decision. The Thalians had voted for exile but were now facing economic recession. The Korvash, who had abstained, were publicly stating that the exile had been a mistake. Even some of the smaller species who had feared human ambition were now missing the opportunities that human trade and innovation had created. Ambassador Haijin watched all of this from her office on Borderline Station, a neutral facility that existed in the space between Council territory and the Rim. She had volunteered to stay behind when the Exodus began, maintaining a presence that allowed communication between the two civilizations. Her official title was Observer, but everyone knew she was really there to facilitate the illegal trade that was growing between Council species and the human Rim colonies. Another request from a Vren industrial concern, her assistant reported. They're offering triple the standard rate for access to the new drive technology that humanity developed for Rim navigation. Haijin smiled. Tell them we'll consider it. But the price just went up to 5 times standard rate. And they need to provide something we actually want in exchange, not just credits. The requests came daily now. Council corporations desperate for human innovation, willing to pay premium prices for technology they could no longer access legally. Council scientists wanting to collaborate on research projects, even some council military officers, quietly asking about the defensive systems humanity was developing in the Rim. Trade Minister Bora arrived at Borderline Station 2 days later. Her shuttle bearing the official seals of what remained of Earth's authorized commercial contacts with Council space. She met Haijan in a private conference room, away from the Council's monitoring systems. The situation is getting desperate for them, Bora said, spreading out economic reports across the table. The Council's GDP has dropped 15% now. Some of the minor species are facing genuine hardship, and the major species are starting to panic. Good, Haijan said coldly. They voted to exile us. Let them feel the consequences. But the minor species who voted against exile or abstained, they're suffering too. The Kyrene homeworld is still under Vren control, and the remaining Kyrene there are being blamed for the economic problems. Haijan's expression softened. What do you need from me? Permission to offer selective humanitarian assistance. Food shipments, medical supplies. Things that won't help the Council's economy, but will help the innocent beings caught in this mess. Granted, but make sure everyone knows where it's coming from. Let the Council species see that humanity is more generous to them than their own leaders. Back in the Council chambers, Councillor Vren Prime faced growing opposition. A coalition of species was demanding that the exile be reversed, that humanity be invited back into Council space with full rights and privileges restored. The exile was legal and properly voted, Vren Prime argued. We cannot simply reverse such a significant decision because of temporary economic difficulties. Temporary? The Thalian representative's voice was sharp with anger. It's been 18 months, and things are getting worse, not better. Our people are suffering because you convinced us that humanity was the problem. But they weren't the problem. They were the solution to problems we didn't even know we had. The debate raged for hours, with Vren Prime's support eroding minute by minute. Finally, a vote was called on whether to send a delegation to the Rim to discuss humanity's return to Council space. The measure passed by a wide margin, with only the Vren Collective and a handful of their closest allies voting against it. 3 weeks later, a Council diplomatic vessel crossed into Rim space for the first time since the exile. The ship moved slowly through the stellar anomalies that protected the Rim, its crew struggling with navigation challenges that human vessels handled routinely. When they finally emerged into calmer space, they found themselves facing a human patrol fleet. Council vessel. This is Captain Nari of the Rim Defense Force. A crisp voice came over their communications system. You are in restricted space. State your business. The Council diplomats exchanged nervous glances. They had expected to find humans struggling to survive in the harsh conditions of the Rim. Instead, they found organized military forces operating with confidence in regions the Council had deemed uninhabitable. This is Ambassador Kelvin of the Thalian Diplomatic Corps, the lead diplomat responded. We request permission to proceed to the nearest human settlement to discuss matters of mutual interest. There was a long pause. Then Captain Nara's voice returned, cool and professional. You may proceed to New Harbor. A navigation beacon will guide you. Be aware that you are under continuous monitoring. Any deviation from the designated flight path will be considered hostile action. The Council ship followed the beacon through a maze of stellar phenomena that would have been impossible to navigate without. When they finally emerged into the New Harbor system, what they saw shocked them into silence. The binary star system that should have been too hostile for habitation was home to a thriving civilization. Orbital stations surrounded both planets. Dozens of ships moved between worlds with easy confidence. And on the surface of the second planet, a city sprawled across the landscape, its lights visible even from orbit. This is impossible, one of the diplomats whispered. The stellar radiation alone should make this system uninhabitable. Humans disagree with that. Assessment, another diplomat replied. They were granted landing permission and descended to a spaceport that was larger and more advanced than many council facilities. As they disembarked, they found themselves in a city that buzzed with activity. Humans walked alongside Kyrene, Nethrons, and dozens of other species, all moving with purpose and energy that was rarely seen in Council space. Ambassador Hyun Woo met them in a conference room overlooking the city. He looked older than when he had left Council space, but his eyes were sharp and his posture confident. "Welcome to New Harbor," he said. "I understand you wish to discuss matters of mutual interest." Ambassador Kelvin laid out the Council's proposal: full reinstatement of human membership with enhanced privileges, removal of all technology development restrictions, generous financial incentives for humanity to return to Council space. Hyun Woo listened in silence until Kelvin finished. Then he stood and walked to the window, gesturing at the city below. "Do you see that?" he asked. "We built this in 18 months. A functioning city of 1 million beings on a world," the Council said, "was uninhabitable. We did it without your regulations, without your committees, without your endless debates about whether innovation was too risky." Turned back to face the delegation. "You exiled us because we made you uncomfortable, because we refused to stagnate. Now you want us back because you're discovering that your comfortable stagnation was killing you slowly." "The answer is no," but surely, Kelvin began. "The answer is no," Hyun Woo repeated firmly. "We're not coming back to Council space. We're building something better out here." As the Council delegation prepared to leave, their sensors detected something at the edge of the system. Something massive, moving through deep space toward Council territory. The readings made no sense, showing energy signatures that matched no known species or technology. "What is that?" Kelvin asked, pointing at the display. Hyun Woo's expression grew grim. "That is why you should have never let us go, and why you're going to need our help very soon." Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of the Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship, and watched the thing that was approaching from deep space. It looked like a storm made of metal and energy, consuming everything in its path. 3 star systems had already gone dark, their matter converted into more of whatever this thing was. The scientists had a name for it now: a replicator swarm, a self-sustaining machine intelligence that turned stellar mass into copies of itself. "It's moving faster than projected," his tactical officer reported. "At current speed, it will reach the rim colonies in 6 weeks. Council space in 3 months. Scientist Jian appeared on the communications screen, calling from the ancient ruins that Dr. Salmon had discovered. Her face was streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but her eyes were bright with discovery. "Admiral, I've got something. The ancients who built these structures, they faced this exact threat. That's what all this technology was designed to fight. Can we use it?" Minho asked bluntly. "Yes, but it's complicated. The weapon systems require coordination between multiple species and technologies. The ancients built them to only activate when different civilizations worked together. One species alone can't operate them." Minho felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Which means we need the Council." "Which means the Council needs us just as badly," Jian corrected. "These weapons won't work without human systems integrated into them. The ancients designed them that way deliberately. Maybe they knew that the greatest threats require the greatest cooperation." A priority communication came through from New Harbor. Ambassador Hyun Woo's face appeared, and behind him, Minho could see a gathering of people. Council diplomats standing alongside human leaders, all looking worried. "The Council is officially requesting military assistance," Hyun Woo said. "They've acknowledged that their own forces are inadequate for this threat. They're willing to discuss terms." Admiral Minji joined the conference from her flagship. She had been coordinating the Rim's defensive preparations, and now she looked at the assembled leaders with hard eyes. "What are their terms?" "Full reinstatement in the Council with autonomous rights. Technology sharing agreements on equal terms. Removal of all development restrictions. Most importantly, they're offering to restructure the entire loot. Council government to give member species genuine autonomy instead of collective control." "Sounds too good to be true," Mingi said suspiciously. "It probably is," Hyun Woo agreed. "But I don't think they're lying about being desperate. Their military has been at peace for so long they've forgotten how to fight. We're their only hope." Minho pulled up the tactical projections again. The replicator swarm would hit the rim colonies first. Even if humanity refused to help Council Space, they would still face this threat. The only question was whether they faced it alone or with allies. "We need to discuss this," Minho said. "Full leadership conference. Every colony, every fleet, every research team, we make this decision together." The conference assembled in New Harbor's main assembly hall, a massive structure that humans had built to house gatherings of their new civilization. Leaders from 50 colonies attended in person, with hundreds more joining via holographic link. The Kyrene Nethrans and other allied species sent their own representatives. Admiral Mingy spoke first, laying out the military realities. "If we fight alone, we might win. The ancient weapons give us an advantage, but casualties will be enormous, and we could lose multiple colonies. If we fight with the Council, our chances improve significantly, but we'll be tied to them again." Dr. Soman presented her findings on the ancient technology. "The weapons are powerful, but they're also fragile. We need redundancy. Multiple species operating different components. The ancients understood that diversity makes systems stronger. One species alone, no matter how capable, has single points of failure." Researcher Geo showed projections of what the replicator swarm could do if left unchecked. "This thing doesn't stop. It consumes and replicates until it runs out of matter to convert. If it gets past us and into Council Space, it could devastate the entire galaxy. We might survive in the rim, but we'd be alone in a dead galaxy." The debate went on for hours. Some argued for letting the Council face the consequences of their exile decision. Others pointed out that innocent beings would die, species that had voted against the exile or had nothing to do with it. The moral questions were complex and painful. Finally, Hunhua stood to speak. The old ambassador had been quiet through most of the debate, but now everyone turned to hear his perspective. "The Council exiled us because we represented change, and they feared change," he said quietly. "They wanted their comfortable, stagnant civilization. We could let them have it. Let them face this threat alone, and probably fail. It would be justice of a sort." He paused, looking around the hall at the faces of humans and aliens who had built something new together. "But we didn't leave Council Space to build another stagnant civilization. We left to build something better. Something that doesn't turn away from challenges or abandon people in need just because they wronged us. If we refuse to help now, we become what the Council accused us of being: selfish, destructive, concerned only with our own interests. So we help them." Someone called out. "We help them," Hyunwoo confirmed, "but on our terms. The Council will reform, or we let them fall. The galaxy that comes after this crisis will be different, more like what we've built in the Rim, or we fight alone and live with the consequences." The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would help defend Council Space, but the Council would have to fundamentally change. No more collective control that stifled innovation. No more economic monopolies that crushed competition. Every species would have genuine autonomy. The freedom to develop and grow without artificial restrictions. The Council accepted the terms. They had no choice. Admiral Minho took command of the Combined Defense Fleet, a position the Council granted with visible reluctance. Council vessels that had never taken orders from humans now found themselves following human tactical doctrine. It was uncomfortable for everyone, but the alternative was extinction. Captain Nari led the vanguard in the Phoenix, a warship that combined human innovation, ancient technology, and Council resources. Her crew was mixed, humans working alongside aliens who had been strangers months before. They trained together in the Rim's stellar anomalies, learning to trust each other when everything went wrong. The replicator swarm arrived at the New Harbor system 6 weeks later, exactly as projected. It was larger than the projections had suggested. A cloud of self-replicating machines that stretched across millions of kilometers. The thing pulsed with energy as it converted stellar matter into more of itself, growing stronger with every passing moment. "All ships to battle stations," Minho ordered. "Ancient weapons charging. This is what we built for." The battle began with humanity's long-range weapons, missiles, and energy beams that slashed into the replicator swarm. The machines adapted quickly, their constituent units reorganizing to absorb or deflect attacks. Council vessels added their firepower. The combined fleet poured destruction into the swarm. But for every machine destroyed, the swarm built 2 more. It was learning from their attacks, adapting its strategies in real time. The fleet had to adapt faster. Activate the ancient weapons, Minho ordered, deep in New Harbor's crust. The ancient machines that Dr. Soman and Jian had studied came online for the first time in 10,000 years. They drew power from the binary suns themselves, channeling energy through quantum fields that human science barely understood. But the weapons required coordination. Different species operating different components in perfect synchronization. Captain Neri's crew worked together as the ancient weapon protocols downloaded into their systems. Humans handled the tactical coordination, their ability to think creatively in chaos proving vital. The Kyrene managed the biotechnical interfaces, their natural affinity for living systems helping bridge the gap between organic operators and ancient machines. The council species contributed their own specialties, pieces of a puzzle that only worked when every part functioned correctly. The first shot from the ancient weapon tore through the replicator swarm like a blade through cloth. The machines tried to adapt, but the weapon operated on principles they couldn't counter quickly enough. More shots followed, each one coordinated between multiple ships and multiple species working in harmony. The battle raged for 3 days. Ships were lost on both sides. Thousands died fighting to protect both the Rim colonies and Council space beyond. The replicator swarm adapted and evolved, but so did the defenders. Human tactical flexibility, combined with Council experience and ancient technology, proved to be exactly the combination needed. On the 3rd day, Captain Nari led a strike force directly into the heart of the swarm. Her ship carried a weapon that Dr. Soman had reconstructed from ancient plans, a device that could disrupt the replicator's core programming. It was a suicide mission by any rational calculation. All ships, this is Nari, beginning final approach. If this doesn't work, it's been an honor. The Phoenix plunged into the swarm, shields burning away under intense fire. Nari's crew worked with desperate precision, each person doing their part in the coordinated dance that would either save the galaxy or accomplish nothing. At the center of the swarm, they found the core processor, the original machine from which all others had replicated. Firing now, Nari said calmly. The ancient weapon discharged, and reality itself seemed to ripple. The replicator swarm froze for a single moment, all its constituent machines locked in place. Then it began to collapse. Machines cannibalizing each other as their corrupted programming turned them against themselves. The asterisk? Phoenix asterisk barely made it out. Its hull breached in a dozen places, and its crew injured but alive. Behind them, the replicator swarm tore itself apart in a cascade failure that took hours to complete. When it was finally over, the combined fleet hung in space above New Harbor, battered but victorious. Human ships flew alongside Council vessels, both groups exhausted and grieving their losses but alive. Admiral Minji's voice came over all channels. All ships, the threat is neutralized. Well done. We won because we worked together. Remember that. The aftermath, the galaxy had to rebuild. But it was rebuilding differently. The Council reformed as promised, granting autonomy to member species and removing the restrictions that had stifled innovation for millennia. The species that had joined humanity in exile were welcomed back with full rights and recognition of their contributions. 20 years later, Ambassador Hyunwoo stood before the Galactic Assembly in the New Harbor Chambers. Built in human style with windows that looked out on the binary sunset, representatives from hundreds of species attended, including many who had voted for humanity's exile. He gave a speech that was brief and direct. You tried to exile us from your civilization because we made you uncomfortable. We built a better one. You faced a crisis, and we helped you survive it. Now you're part of something that values growth over comfort, innovation over stagnation. Welcome. Try to keep up. The galaxy that emerged was louder, more chaotic, and infinitely more innovative than what the old council had been. Species competed and cooperated in equal measure. Technology advanced at a pace that would have terrified the old council leadership. The comfortable stagnation was gone, replaced by constant change and growth, and somewhere in deep space, human scout ships continued pushing outward, exploring regions that no one had yet dared to venture, because that's what humanity did. When exiled, they didn't retreat. They advanced into territory no one else would claim and made it home. The exile had been meant to preserve the old galaxy. Instead, it became the catalyst that transformed everything. And the species that had voted to exile. Humanity found themselves living in a civilization that humans had, fundamentally reshaped through their refusal to accept limits. The galaxy would never be comfortable again, but it would never stop growing either.